Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. Let's get smarter about growing older. I guarantee you've read about this in the news, seen TV headlines, and maybe have experienced it yourself, the incredible rise of scamming of older adults. This phenomena is growing worldwide, and the manner in which scammers go about their business is insidious and really hard to identify. So how can we protect ourselves? I am so fortunate to have today's guest, who is an expert in this complex and ever-changing field of fraud. Attorney Ronald Long began his career with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, serving as counselor to the chairman. He also created the Elder Client Initiatives for Wells Fargo advisors, providing critical advice for recognizing and preventing financial abuse for older clients. He has been in this field for years, and currently, Mr. Long serves as a co-lead of the Senior Investor Compliance Services team at Stevens & Lee, providing services to help financial firms protect their investors from fraud. He has seen it all, and he understands this field and is here to help. Welcome to Seniority Authority, Ron. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, for inviting me, and I am absolutely thrilled to know that you're out there helping bring key information to many of our older Americans at this critical time of their lives.
Well, it's so important, and the rise of this has been really extraordinary. Let's start with talking about the increase in elder financial abuse recently. You've been in this industry for a long time. How have you seen it grow or change during your time?
Well, sadly, it has grown tremendously, Kathleen. And one of the reasons is we actually don't necessarily have the best statistics, so we can only measure a little bit. In 2010, Metropolitan Life Insurance did a study, and they estimated that losses by older Americans to elder financial abuse fraud was about $2.93 billion. AARP did a more refined study last year in 2023, and by their estimates, the number is $28 billion lost every year. So
$28 billion every year?
Every year, and we worry that that's undercounted. As you can imagine, many of us feel embarrassed and ashamed. We may not admit that we succumb to fraud online. Sometimes in some families, if they find out that mom or dad is falling victim to frauds, and the kids think they're doing the right thing, but they come in, Mom, you can't be on your own anymore. You got to pack up, sell the house, and you're going to move in with me, or you're going to move close to where I live. If I knew that was going to happen as an older person, I may not tell you how much I've fallen for a victim to a fraud or what have you. So we do think the 28 billion is huge. We worry that the number is a true undercount.
Well, I want to just touch on one thing that you mentioned, which I think is really a critical part of this piece, is the shame that people feel once they have experienced fraud, because they feel like, I'm smart, I should know about this. And I think older adults are afraid, if I admit something like this happened, exactly the scenario you painted, my kids are going to come in, they're going to say that I'm not competent. And it's wrong to focus on the victim. I can't think of any other crime, and maybe like rape, but I can't think of any other crime where we blame the victim as opposed to the perpetrator. So why do you think we have such a focus on the victim here? Why do we blame people for the fraud?
Yeah, and the rape analogy is good because there is a little bit of value judgment being put in place that, oh, if you hadn't warned that, it wouldn't have happened. And similarly here, if you hadn't been on the dating website, if you hadn't simply clicked on a pop-up that you shouldn't have clicked on, you fell for it. And we hear that phrasing all the time. And we all look at it and say, oh, that's so obvious. Why would anyone fall for it? But most of us never put ourselves in the shoes of that person at that time with, and remember, these scam artists are professionals, with the emotional links and the pushes that the professionals use to get ordinarily smart, from PhDs to whatever, people to do not so smart things.
And with the number of 28 billion every single year, which is probably underreported, we don't have necessarily a profile, except we know it's majority of older adults. And is that, Ron, a combination of they're the ones who have accumulated the most resources, and they're the ones that are navigating this new online space? They're not necessarily as confident online. Is that kind of the reasoning why so many scams focus on older adults?
I think that's most of it. And you will hear some statistics that at all ages we're falling for scams, and maybe younger. And I use that word falling and people don't like it, but that's my quick language. But younger people actually click on and have more victimization for some of these scams, yet they don't have, and you mentioned it, they don't have the money. So if I'm a bad guy, I only get so many opportunities. And our older folks have done a wonderful job of saving and investing for their future. And that nest egg that they have is exactly what the bad guys want to tap into. And you victimize the 27-year-old if you get everything they have, $5,000 if you're lucky. Victimize an older person and you get everything they have. Hundreds of thousands of dollars can and are lost to these frauds.
Do you think that it is easier for people to commit fraud now than it was 10 years ago? How has the fraud industry, if it is an industry, how has it changed?
Well, that word industry is very important. So it is easier because we're more connected. I can sit in some foreign country, long as I have electrical power and a laptop, I can reach into every American home, either by internet or by phone, or voice over internet protocols or what have you. And I play the numbers. You dial for dollars, essentially. You try 100 times. If you hit one out of 100, and that's a $40,000 scam or $400,000 scam, your numbers are good. So in many countries, and I try not to name countries because some people feel that's biased, but there are many countries where organized crime literally has set up mills, factories of fraud.
Oh my gosh.
Go up to work and leave after a work day, and their sole purpose is to scam, obviously Americans often, but around the world. This is their job, scamming.
So this is, would you say the majority of fraud is perpetrated by organized crime in other countries, or organized crime worldwide?
Well, this is going to be uncomfortable, but let's just say it. The bulk of the fraud happening to U.S. older Americans is what I call 3 F's in a C, and not my report card, but friends, families, fiduciary, and caretakers. These are people the older person knows. Nonetheless, the fraud committed by the overseas actors is significant. I believe estimates by AARP is close to $8 billion is overseas fraud of the 28 billion number we said before. That's real money. That's significant. It's impactful. But I don't want to lose sight of, we have some bad actors that are often close to us.
Okay, I think that's a really important point, and I just want to reiterate that of the 28 billion in fraud every year, about 8 billion is estimated to be overseas, and the majority is estimated to be those who are known to you.
Correct. And again, all estimated numbers and what have you, but we have found, even in my prior work, we did see a good number of the types of victims that came through our team were folks who were being victimized by someone they knew.
That's even worse.
That is worse because it's a breach of both trust and a loss of your funds. The scam artist is not really breaching a trust, and they work the scam to make it feel that way. But to have a son, daughter, nephew, grandson, a religious leader, a professional, whether financial, legal, accounting, or caretaker, someone you bring literally into your home to help you maintain and be vibrant in your age and have them take advantage. That is so damaging. And I think it contributes to one statistic that I've heard, which is that victims of fraud, victims of other financial abuse, tend to have a morbidity rate in the next 5 years that's 3 times higher than non-victims. In other words, 3 times more likely to die in the next 5 years if you've been victimized by financial abuse than those who haven't been victimized. And you can look behind the music and try to debate, are there other things going on? But they probably are. If you had that degree of trust, that degree of loss, it probably has physical consequences to the way your heart beats, the way you breathe, the way you personally feel.
Yeah, we definitely know there's a incredibly powerful mind-body connection. And if you are victimized by someone who's close to you, a son, a daughter, a nephew, a caretaker, that's got to rock your world at a time when lots of other things, your world is getting smaller. So you're trusting these people. And then when you find out they have damaged that trust, that's got to be devastating. And that might also lead to a lack of reporting, because if you are older and you're trusting people to help you live your life, and then they take all of your money, how are you going to report that? How are you going to take care of that?
Yeah, I have a prosecutor friend who gives the example. You're at home, you come from the bank and you have $400 and you leave it on the kitchen table. You go take a shower or whatever, come back down, the money's gone. The only person who's been in your house is your son.
Right.
How many of us are going to call the police and say, my son has stolen my money? And the answer is virtually none of us would.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why this number is so underreported. What are the most common types? Because everyone listening, I'm sure, is glued to this conversation. So, Ron, how can we protect ourselves as older adults? What are the most common types of fraud to watch out for?
I would say the 3 that are pretty predominant nowadays are what I call the technology scam, the romance scam, and the imposter scam. Quickly, a technology scam, you're on your laptop, you're on your computer, and all of a sudden the pop-up screen says something's wrong. Click here and we will help fix it. If that pop-up comes on your computer, please never click it. And in fact, I would prefer that you unplug the computer, unplug your router, and call son, daughter, or someone to come help. If you do that, you at least nip that fraud in the bud. They can look at it. Maybe a computer needs to be taken to Geek Squad, but you haven't done that first step, which is to click on that link. The second one is our dating sites. And look, as we age, many of us have relationships that have changed. I used to call it the Ds, the death, disability, divorce. And these are challenging times. You've lost that partner 30, 40 years. Loneliest time in the day, it may be a dinner where you used to always reconnect. The dating sites are perfect for trying to bring you back into the loop, but they're not perfect for screening and having you be aware that some significant percentage of the folks you will click on are scammers, professional scammers, putting up fake photos, putting up fake stories, fake bios. And it should always be curious to you that there's a bio that seems to match everything you've ever wanted to do. You wanted to always be a left-handed musical whistler, and all of a sudden there's a profile that says, I'm a left-handed musical whistler. So the dating sites are very challenging. And my one thing there is, please try to date. That's fine. Use the dating sites. That's fine. But never, ever give any money, not one nickel, to anyone you've met on a dating site. I don't care how much in love you are. Never give them a nickel, absent actually eventually, if it all works out and maybe you're married, partnered up, or what have you. But that's a long ways down the line from 3 clicks, and the next thing you're sending $40,000 because the love of your life says that a medical emergency has happened in some foreign, faraway country.
Now, let me just pause on that for a second, Ron, because it is so easy for people to hide behind a dating profile and a great photo, et cetera. Do most of these dating scams happen without the person meeting them? Or is it that you meet in person and they start grooming or continuing to build the relationship? What is the most typical thing here?
Well, the vast majority are people you've never met. Remember, these are often still the organized crime folks working out of the factory in the foreign country, creating profiles online. That's the way this works usually. We've all had the bad date.
Oh, yeah.
We had a bad date. That happened. And most of us protect ourselves from those folks. It's these online strangers who push every button of need that you have and make themselves appear to be the solution to all of your loneliness woes. And we simply have to do more for that. Again, the only thing I can simply say is no money should ever be given to anybody you meet on a dating site. I say period to start.
Yeah.
There's no exception to that rule.
Okay. I hope everyone is listening.
Then,
go on the dating sites and date or meet people. Do not give them money. Do not.
Yeah, exactly. Loneliness is a big challenge in this country. Dating sites help reduce the loneliness, but you have to use it the right way. And the right way is never sending money. And the final one is imposter scams. And they're very good and sophisticated now, but they can pretend to be your bank. They can pretend to be Social Security. They can pretend to be any number of relationships you have today financially, or your children even, with AI faking the grandson or what have you. Here, I think the solution is, even if a pop-up says, I am your bank, something's terrible happened, please click here and let's find out and work on it. No. Again, cut the computer off. You have in your monthly statement or other places your official bank contact number. Use that. If you're in a location where you can visit the bank, go to the bank. I received a message online saying something's terrible with my account. Can you check? 99.9% of the time, there's nothing wrong. But it's when we use the links given to us by that imposter website, pretending to be Social Security or your bank or what have you, you are now in the clutches of the bad guys. And I know some folks out there say, oh, I can get in, I'm going to fool the bad guys. Stop it.
Why?
This is what they do. They will always be better than you. Period. Full stop. Don't do it.
I love that advice. Do not try to outsmart the bad guys. And those I think are really challenging because they look official. I've gotten texts on my phone from what looks like the U.S. Postal Service, UPS. We've got a package. We can't release it until you click this link. And it looks official. No, because the post office never will send a text to you, but it looks so real.
The problem is, and I'm not the best person at understanding it, but once we get in, our normal defenses seem to go emergency rush. You have to do it. We all of a sudden lose sight of some of our basic common sense things we would normally do. And we fall within the ether, which is what the bad guys want. And they understand how to manipulate you from there. And we've seen folks manipulated, again, into moving hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not everyone. But if you lose only $1,000, that's not $1,000 that you probably can afford to lose. Or even if you can't afford it, it's not a good idea to help fund the bad guys. They take that $1,000 and say, this is a good business. Let me now go after the next people.
Or they'll try to scam you again a different way. And let's talk about the people that they're scamming are not stupid people.
Exactly.
So let's just pause for a moment. And for all those people, and I'm certainly one, like, oh, well, I won't be scammed because I'm smart enough to recognize it. No, they're smarter than you. As you said, many of them, it's their full-time job, and they have figured a way around it. And you can get scammed even if you're smart.
Even if you're smart, but I want you to be smart, but skeptical. You cannot, like I said, let's never contact these people who initiate the contact with you. If you have a Social Security problem, you contact Social Security yourself with the number you find through legitimate sources. If one of the scams is Amazon calls to say your identity has been stolen by fraud, drug ring people in Mexico, and then they try to pass you from one person to the FBI to, even if you pick up that initial call or make that initial contact, never ever stay around for them to pass you to the next person, to pass you to supposedly the FBI, or pass you on. Anytime they want to pass you to someone else, that's a time again to click, hang up, call and report to law enforcement, report to Adult Protective Services. Report, report, report. Because the more the reports go out, hopefully we'll be able to finally start tracking some of these folks down. It's hard when they're overseas, but we can start building at least a roster of the types of people and the numbers they use. So you're going to force them to have to abandon that process and try a new one. The more we make them work hard, the better off we'll be overall.
And you're kind of headlining or managing that process worldwide. But before we get into that, about what practical one or two things do you think that everyone who's listening should do or know to protect themselves from fraud? And the one thing I would just kick off this by saying, the phones are also a positive, because I get so many calls on my phone and now it says potential scam. Yeah. So I don't pick up the phone from anyone that I don't know.
That's the best advice. I love that. Never, if it's a kid or it's a doctor's office, they often leave a message. They will leave a message, but you do not answer the phone for a number you do not recognize. And even if I like the potential scam, but sometimes the telecom people miss one or two. Mm-hmm. So you're still not picking up the phone for any calls. And I even have a problem. Sometimes I'm expecting a call or whatever, but if I'm expecting a call, that person should be leaving me a message as well. So I can call them back. But if I had two things to do, one would be, and this is hard for some families to do, but you need to sit down and have family financial conversations. And I know it's tough. Some folks don't want kids to know how much money they have. Maybe you don't have to say how much, but you should, number one, have a family password. So if ever there's a call, Grandma, it's me. Who, Billy? Yes, Billy. The next question from Grandma should be, okay, Billy, what is the family password?
Oh, I love that.
Billy cannot give the family password. You're not giving Billy any money. Now, the other thing I would like grandparents to do is call your son or daughter before you ever send anything to Billy. Just got a call from Billy. He says he's in Peru. He was in an auto accident, hit a pregnant woman. The baby died, and he needs $40,000 or they won't let him out of the country. Call your son or daughter. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom, but Billy's sitting right next to me. Or Billy just left to go to class or whatever. So we need to encourage family password and talking to the family about issues. Never take a step where you haven't talked to son or daughter. Now, I realize a number of us are aging alone and what have you, so it doesn't work for everyone, but that's a start. And in that same vein, the other thing I want folks to do is go to your financial institution and say, I would like to give you the name of my son or daughter for in case of emergency contact. The official name in some security circles is trusted contact. Here's my daughter's number. Because remember, basically our financial information is private. Privacy is such that a bank or brokerage firm should not even acknowledge to your children that you have an account with them. What you're saying is, I'm giving you permission to breach privacy with this son or daughter for the purpose of anytime you see something of concern, please call them and talk to them and say, your dad just came in, said he's sending $50,000 to help his grandson buy a house in some foreign country. We just wanted to check in because he previously gave us your name as a financial contact. Should we have concerns? That son or daughter can then step into action. Mom, Dad, what are you talking about? The bank just called.
Right.
Our son's not in this foreign country. What are you doing? Are you in a scam? So you can use that. And then the final thing I want folks to do, and I know this is a problem with this area, you end up with 50 tips. I don't like 50, but I've got 3 here. The third one is to never, ever lie to your financial profession. Period. End of story. Lie is a strong word.
Yeah.
Lie is a strong word. But the scammers have convinced many of us older folks to go into the bank, ask for 10, 15, whatever number. And many of the banks have done good training and they ask you, yes, Ron, but what do you need the money for? And the scammers have trained and coached us. And many of us do tell a lie to the teller, tell a lie to our financial profession. I've seen the one where the $40,000 going to a foreign country, and they said, it's for my sister-in-law who has a cancer diagnosis, and this country has an experimental treatment that has a 60% survival rate. What financial professional is not going to give you money to save your sister-in-law from death because it needs it? But they shouldn't do that. But you've just lied to them and put them in a bad spot. What are they supposed to do? So you cannot lie to your financial professionals. I don't care who's asked you. I don't care why they've asked you. And they come up with very elaborate stories on why you should lie to the bank or lie to the brokerage firm, lie to the credit union.
Wow.
Please don't do it. If you do those 3 things, have family financial meetings, set up, and in case of emergency or trusted contact, and make an ironclad promise to yourself and your family that you will never lie. I said to the bank or to your family. We have people lying to their family members when the daughter or son steps in. Mom, why are you sending the money? They give the son or daughter a lie that was given to them by the scammers.
Oh, sure.
Do not lie about finances, particularly when the lie is given to you by some third party who's probably overseas.
Wow. And I like the family password idea because I have read that with AI now, they can take a 6-second clip of your voice and expand that to sound exactly like you when you are calling a parent or a grandparent. So it can sound just like you, but the family password is brilliant because they would have no idea of knowing.
Exactly.
Those are great ideas. Please, everyone who's listening, do those 5 things because that is really important way to protect yourselves. And share this podcast, share this video because it's really important. Everyone can be scammed. Now, not only has Ron been studying this and advocating for this, but he's also now part of a worldwide group of multidisciplinary professions who are doing something about this trend worldwide. Can you describe your concept of the Moonshot Initiative and what that's all about?
Great.
This is so exciting.
Well, it's a lot of fun for us to do, but essentially, we have said we all know this elder financial abuse problem exists, but I don't think we've tackled it with a full court press. So I use the example of the moonshot in the 60s. I'm old enough to remember, but that was every state in the country, every industry in the country getting involved to land a person on the moon and return them safely to Earth by a date certain. So we had Tang making orange juice so these folks could get vitamin C in space. Playtex, who normally makes girdles, was involved in making the spacesuit so they could walk on the moon. Everybody involved. So we said, let's go out to the LinkedIn community and come up with, what do you think? Again, politics, no issue. I don't want to know money, no issue initially. We just want to get the best ideas. If you were to come up with the ideas that would end elder financial abuse by 2030, what would those ideas be? My small group initially came up with 65 or so, but the beauty of this is we essentially crowdsourced it to the LinkedIn community. We've come up with over 130. Quite frankly, we've just added 131 because you, Kathleen, gave us one, which is the tech nieces. Can we get pairing high schoolers with seniors to work on technology issues? Much like I mentioned, the pop-up to unplug the router, cut your computer off. Wouldn't it be great if a tech niece then came in and helped you get back up and running and having avoided a scam? So these ideas, we think if we would do these, we can get to a place where elder financial abuse no longer plagues this country. So we got over 130 ideas, but we broke them down to 5 basic categories. So first is see something, say something. We cannot stand by idly if you see the neighbor across the street, maybe potentially falling for something or looking to do something unusual. Let's report that. We want to do more with public service announcements. I love that we're doing this today, but some folks are hearing for the first time some tips that should be in PSAs that follow a commercial at the football game or the ice skating finals or whatever it might be. We need public service announcements. Maybe the government has to pay. Maybe some of the corporations will use their charitable work to do it. But let's do some public service announcements. Technology. We talked earlier about the bad guys using technologies. Can we get these innovators to take some of those great ideas in technology and use it to fight against elder financial abuse? Fight the fraud early. The next one I go to is enforcement or accountability. I think others, many folks think, hey, you go shame and blame, but you don't chase the perpetrators. We do, but it's a little tough when they're overseas. But let's try and see if we can do more overseas. But how about if we catch you here in the United States, let's do more prosecutions here. And one of the things that I'm very frustrated with, and I'll get to this on my last one, well, I might as well go to it. Legislative. We need better laws. We need laws that work. We need laws that will help. When I say legislative, there is today, and I mentioned family, friends, or abusers. If a family member abuses, let's say the grandparent, and is actually convicted of elder financial abuse, but the grandparent hasn't changed her will, or independent of not changing a will, doesn't have a will, but intestate succession. Intestate means the state makes a will for you. And the will the state makes says son gets the money. In all but 11 states today in the United States, even though I've committed elder financial abuse against the very person who's died and left this bequest, I can collect that money. That should not happen. You should be viewed as if you, the word we use is predeceased, you should be viewed as you don't exist anymore. And whatever is left of the family, if there were 5 kids, there are now only 4 that get to split the money. You get not a nickel because you committed elder financial abuse and were convicted of it. I'm not saying just accused, although accused will work for me, but I'm trying not to be too extreme. But convictions of elder financial abuse, and you still get to inherit, you still get to be paid out on an insurance policy where you were named a beneficiary at a time when the grandmother thought you were a good kid or a good grandson, and it turns out you're a convict, you're a felon. You've committed elder abuse against that very grandmother. So those are the 5 things the Moonshot Initiative talks about broadly. There are 100, like I said, 130 plus your idea, 131 ideas that we're going to use. And you don't have to implement all 130, but can we start moving towards a lot of them? And if the more we do, the more we're able to put a dent in the crime wave of elder financial abuse and eventually, hopefully, stop it in this country.
That sounds Fantastic. If our listeners wanted to learn more about the Moonshot Initiative, Ron, where should they go?
You should go on LinkedIn and just plug in the words, the Moonshot Initiative. We have actually set up a LinkedIn page so they can go in, they'll see the full documents, they'll see the list. We've got to make sure we're updating it to add that new ones that come in. And truly, if you have ideas that we haven't thought of, please submit ideas. And again, I don't do a value judgment. We take all the ideas. I can't say I agree with all 131, but I want the ideas out there because they may be the best way forward as we fight elder financial abuse in this country.
So Ron is one of the most involved financial professionals I know in fighting elder abuse. And in your current role at Stevens and Lee, you're taking your expertise, as I understand it, and helping other financial advisors and financial firms. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing now and how you might be able to help somebody who perhaps has a financial firm but does not have this high level of expertise and knowledge about fraud?
Yeah, sure. And this is a good extension of what I did at the large financial firm. Some of the large financial firms, and we were able to do it, we had a team of folks, almost 15 people dedicated to fighting elder financial abuse, helping the advisors, understanding what the requirements were to file a case in Arizona versus Alabama. A smaller firm cannot, a medium-sized firm cannot dedicate that number of people, put that kind of money up for personnel, benefits, and what have you. So our plan at Stevens & Lee is to say, don't. Hire us on an outsourced basis, and we will do that for you as needed. And you're going to pay us a fee, but it's going to be far less than having the staff up. And we're there to protect and train you and your team to look for and recognize, and then reach out to us should something come up. And we know the difference between Arizona and Alabama. We'll make the filings. We'll work and walk through the process with Adult Protective Services, law enforcement, or the state regulator, depending on the situation. So it's very exciting. We're at the beginning stages of this, and I hate to do shameless commercial plugs, but here we go. I would just encourage folks to think about it. And if they at least want to get more information, please reach out to us.
And that's stevensandlee.com.
Yes.
And all of this, if you are listening, all of these links and information are going to be in our show notes. So if you do have a trusted, and who among us doesn't have a trusted financial advisor that's a smaller firm that perhaps you've known and you trust, but they don't have this level. They don't have a former SEC investigator, Wells Fargo specialist in this kind of area. This is a perfect way for your financial institution to learn more, train themselves on what is an ever-evolving, ever-changing landscape of elder financial abuse, and get the help that they need so that you are protected as well. It's just smart business, in my opinion.
Yes, exactly. I appreciate that.
Is there anything else I haven't asked you that you would want to share with our listeners today, Ron?
I think you've covered most of it, but I think the one thing, and you probably see me circle back to it, please communicate with the family. Have conversations. Be open about this issue. And it may be that you don't want to say to the nickel how much money you have. That's fine. But you want to be able to be comfortable enough to say, I have listed you as trusted contact. I want you to step in and assist should the bank or the brokerage firm or the advisor ever call you to say we're concerned. And look, scams are part of the calls, but sometimes as we age, some of us start to face, the one D I left out was dementia, diminished capacity. And the trusted contact can help with that. The phone call will be, daughter, we're concerned about Ron. He's come into the branch a couple of times. He seems confused. I need you to call and step in and see if there's something more that needs to be done. And in all honesty, we've had in the past clients thank us for actually alerting them. We didn't know, because we're all good children, but sometimes we come in for a skip and a wave on Mother's Day, Father's Day. We might be there for Thanksgiving, but we've moved away. Our careers, our families take us far away. So we're not able to see the day-to-day changes. So this trusted contact, the ability to have someone reach out and talk when a situation arises, I think is critically important.
It is so important. I have a very good friend whose mother-in-law wrote a $20,000 check to the electric company. And it was supposed to be a $2,100 check or something like that. And that's how they first found out when they went through her bank account and realized the electric company didn't return the money. They're like, oh, okay, this is great. So it can happen. Don't think you are above this or too smart for this. They are very smart, organized people, and things happen. So please take this seriously. Take Ron's advice to heart. Use the time, whether it's over Thanksgiving or at a backyard picnic or a birthday party, to say, hey, I heard this on this podcast. Can we just talk about this? I'd like to have these 3 things done, and protect yourself and all of that hard-earned money that you want to spend in the ways that you would like to. You didn't save up money to hand it over to a scammer.
I love that. That's exactly true. I'm going to take that line if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Ron, you have been so wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and all of these years of expertise. And you've just boiled it down beautifully to our listeners. But before we go, I do have 2 fun questions to ask you so we can get to know you better. What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Well, I am very guilty of this, but fortunately I don't do it often, but I am a soft serve ice cream fiend. Can't do it every day. Dairy Queen, Carvel's, Culver's, even Wendy's Big Frosty.
That's awesome.
I'm actually a former Guinness Book of World Record holder for eating the most hard ice cream. I'm not of the hard ice cream world record business, but the soft serve gets the mold a lot.
Well, you don't want to keep that record going, and you are very much in shape. So it clearly was in a long ago past.
Yeah, fortunately, long ago past. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's guaranteed to make you laugh?
And this one is, again, a guilty pleasure as well, but you've probably seen it. And I blame TikTok and YouTube, but the toddlers, they're pre-verbal, they can't say a word to their name, speaking toddlerish in an emphatic way to get their point across. Hands on hips and pointing. And I would love to be able to translate whatever the heck they're saying. But they're saying something, they're saying a lot of it.
I love that. There's a video of a man watching TV with his toddler child, and he's talking to the child is talking back, like saying nonsense.
You can't watch those without getting a big belly laugh out of them.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ron. It's been a pleasure. You've done a wonderful job educating our listeners. All the information is going to be in the show notes. And I wish you all the best with your work at Stevens & Lee, spreading this knowledge to as many people as possible.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, and thanks for doing this. We need more Kathleens in all 50 states.
Okay, I'll do what I can. That's our show for today. If you liked it, please tell your friends so we can reach more minds and keep the conversation going. Or follow us on social at Seniority Authority. I'm Kathleen Toomey. Until next time, enjoy your chance to get smarter about growing older.